Acute pyelonephritis. Now, acute pyelonephritis, if you look at this picture, is a bacterial infection of the renal parenchyma. This is a organ-threatening or life-threatening condition, and eventually it heals by scarring. What are these areas are? These are the micro abscesses or abscess formation. Whenever they will heal by fibrosis, and that is ultimately a scar will be there. It may have a typical pattern, or it may not have a consistent set of signs, which should be able to make it a exact diagnosis. So always keep a high index of suspicion. The suspicion must be because the sooner you intervene, sooner you treat the patient, more better is the recovery. Wherever in the later phases, the recovery will be a bit difficult. So timely management will have a significant impact on the patient outcomes. What causes pyelonephritis? There are essentially two ways. The infection is typically bacterial. Now, there are two ways of this bacterial invasion to happen in the renal parenchyma. Mostly, it is because of the ascending infection from the lower urine tract. So, in case you have a cystitis, if you have some kind of a reflux here, if you have some kind of obstruction, and which permits this infected urine or organisms to go up, that is the most common cause. Second cause is hematogenous separate. Hematogenous separate means from the blood, that is bacteremia is there, and the sources are gram-positive organisms such as staph. Now, these mostly are found in patients of IV drug abusers or patients with endocarditis. So, bloodstream and ascending infection from the lower urinary tract. I shared the message in the chat box. I hope I am audible because I've not got any feedback so far. The infections can be, this pyelonephritis can be uncomplicated, complicated. I'll give you a definition of complicated. What is a complicated UTI in the next slide. The most commonest organisms which are found are gram-negative. Now, these are the organisms which are ascending from the lower urinary tract. Gram-positive, on the other hand, mostly are from the bloodstream. The dominant ones include E. coli. Wherever in complicated, it can be one bacteria or it can be a mixture of bacteria. As far as the epidemiology of pyelonephritis is there, for unknown reasons or because of the reasons of physiological condition of a pregnancy, pyelonephritis has been found more in females than in males. But this age gap, this gender gap becomes almost same at an increasing age. That is, after 60 years, they have a equal distribution. Pyelonephritis also develops in pregnant women in 20 to 30% of cases, but that especially develops during the second or third trimester, where the gravid uterus is causing some kind of a external compression on the ureter, which is leading to some kind of a stasis. In males, you can have a bimodal kind of a pattern. That is bimodal. It is maybe present in maximally it is present in the childhood, that is 0 to 4 years of age. Then it has a peak of around 35, and after 60 or after 80, female and female are equally affected. Like I already said, now this condition should be diagnosed early and treated early because that will have a significant impact on the outcome. Any patient who has this kind of infection or who's not responding or deteriorates suddenly, that means it is already a complicated one, or we are dealing with a resistant organism. Obstruction is one of the most important factors. What will happen in obstruction? Say if there is a block at the uretropelvic junction, there is a block in the ureter because of the stone or because of the tumor, or there is a block downway at the lower end of the ureter. It will inhibit the urine flow. and it will lead to a pooling of urine, which will be urinary stasis. Now, this becomes a medium for the urine to go. If there is a running tap water, the water keeps on moving. If there is a drain, which we have seen, if it keeps on, a river keeps on moving, there we don't find any dirt in that. But in case it is stasis, like we see our river Yamuna, it is full of dirt. The same thing happens here. Whenever there is a urinary stasis, it becomes a medium for bacterial growth and ultimately infection. Now, this obstruction can be external or intrinsic, external or internal. Now, external can be a prostatic enlargement, any of the retroperitoneal masses which will engulf the ureter and cause obstruction. Intrinsic are within the system. That means most of the time it is a stone which is obstructing the system. And in less common causes, it could be strictures or capillary necrosis. So the debris is there, which is blocking the urinary out. Complicated infection means that is infection of the urinary tract where the efficacy of antibiotics is reduced. Now, there can be various factors for this. Number one is structural abnormality of the urinary tract. That is, the penetration of antibiotic may not be possible. Functional abnormalities, metabolic abnormalities like conditions of diabetes or any other endocrine pathologies, unusual pathogens, and recent antibiotic or antibiotic resistant bacteria. In case you have a recent instrumentation, whenever we introduce anything inside the urinary system, that is the instrumentation, the potential of introducing infection is always there. Even if we are doing a Foley's catheterization, we are not taking care of aseptic precautions, then we can put an infection inside. So what happens in obstruction? You find a stone here. This is a stone in the ureter, and this is so-called hydronephrosis. That is urinary pooling, urinary stasis, and ultimately because of the bacterial ascending infection, there can be pyelonephritis. Now this is what happens. See, this is a normal one, and here if there was an obstruction, this will happen. There will be hydronephrosis. Or it can be any immunocompromised individual. Even hydronephrosis may not be required. There can be any ascending infection which can cause pyelonephritis. This is the same in the radiological image. So what happens in pyelonephritis? If you see the pathology, if you see this image of this kidney, you see this all yellow dot. Now these are areas of microabscesses and abscesses. And the kidney is already enlarged. So there can be loss of demarcation between the cortex and medulla. This happens especially when we do a cut section of the kidney. There can be, now these areas are infiltrated with polymorphonuclear leukocytes, and ultimately some kind of a abscess will develop. Abscess will not develop if we act early, if we have controlled the infection by the antibiotics or any other treatment like drainage wherever indicated. It can be, this particular infection can be, a focal, that is a particular area of the kidney is involved. It could be multifocal, like this. One patch is here, one is here, one this is here, and multiple yellow dots, that is microabscesses, will be there. There can be xanthogranulomatous pyelonephritis. Now, this is a granulomatous infection of the kidney. Or it could be emphysematous pyelonephritis. As this word is emphysematous, that is gas-related. It is a severe kind of a necrotizing kidney infection where the gram-negative organisms are there and they produce a gas. And this gas is a classical hallmark of emphysematous pyelonephritis. I will show in the subsequent slides. How the patient will present with pyelonephritis? Like I said, a physician or a surgeon has to put a high index of suspicion because the classical triad which I am listing here may not be present in all the cases. If it is present, they will find fever, will have a costovertebral angle tenderness or pain, along with nausea, vomiting. Patients may have symptoms of UTI or may not have. There can be generalized, body ache, malaise, and weakness. In females, in around 20% of the cases, hematuria is also present. Then you can have adjunct to it that the various gastrointestinal symptoms like anorexia and nausea. In children, this manifests with fever, vomiting, and failure to thrive. If it is a child smaller in age, less than 3 or 4, there would be feeding difficulty also. In elderly, the most of the infection they progress very rapidly. So you may find fever, you will find altered mental status, or you may find a rapid deterioration of the patient. And if that is happening, the patient will have a generalized toxic load. How to proceed? When we get some patient with fever, post-overdwell tenderness, you will need some kind of investigations. I've listed the blood and urine investigation followed by radiological investigations. So in urine analysis, what can we find? We can find pyuria, that is the presence of bacteria or the white blood cells which happen in response to this infectious agent in the urine. So more than 5 is taken as pyuria, 1 or 2 maybe occasionally more. In cases of pyelonephritis, there is always, they can have some significant amount of pyuria ranging from normally 10 to 20, but can go up to 50 to 100 WBCs per high fever feed. You can also do a rapid test, which is a dipstick leukocyte X-ray test, which can be done at the bedside, because other investigations to demonstrate this will require a microscopic exam. In some cases, as the infection may proceed, if there is a damage to the renal cortex or the renal urothelium, there can be microscopic hematuria also. As the kidney may be compromised because of this, proteinuria can also be expected. Now, these are the investigations which we do on urine routine microscopy. If the patient is comorbid, then patient may have elevated sugars also. In the blood investigation, when we open, we are looking essentially for a CBC, that is a complete blood count. There can be anemia of chronic disease, or if the patient who are having failure to thrive, who have some kind of a repeated infections. So we may find there is an increased TNC and the neutrophils are also increased. ESR, non-specific marker, but it is raised. CRP, that is C-reactive protein, correlates with the infection and the inflammation in the body. And definitely KFTs are required. It is the kidney which is being affected, and for various drugs, you should know the various interactions also. The most important investigation here will be urine culture. Now, urine culture is required to establish the causative organisms and to give antibiotics accordingly. But most of the times, patients who present are sick. You will not wait for the urine culture report and the antibiotics started out empirically, depending on the institutional protocol or the local antibiotic policy. And whenever the culture comes after 48 hours, if you find the organism was found to be resistant, then you change over to sensitive antibiotic to which the organism is sensitive. In sick patients, admitted patients, blood culture should be a routine. It has been found that 10 to 20% have cultures positive. So one of the causative factors is bloodstream infection because of various causes. The collection of urine specimens should be very important. It should be ideally a clean catch. In the clean catch, the skin or the labia, especially in females, should not be touching. If you find more epithelial cells in the urine examination, that means skin contamination has already happened. In case you find the normal commensal of the skin coming in the urine, that also indicates that contamination has happened. Or in males, you can also look for midstream clean catch. That is, whenever somebody is starting the stream of urine, the earlier portion may be discarded and the middle of the stream should be collected in a clean, sterile bottle. That should be the ideal way of collecting a urine sample for all these things. In case that is not possible, patient is admitted, you have already put a catheter there, and you can take the sample from the urethral catheter, not from the back. The sample which should be taken should be coming from the tubing, not from the back. And in cases we are not able to distinguish whether this is pyelonephritis, whether this is the causative organisms, we can go for suprapubic needle aspiration. Now that will eliminate that contamination has come from the catheter or some other sources. Moving to radiological examination, we can do ultrasound. Ultrasound has its own advantages. If the patient is too sick and hemodynamically unstable, then it can be performed at bedside. It is inexpensive. There is no radiation. There is no contrast, but it is user dependent. It may be interpreted as different by a different ultrasoundologist. But however, it is not very good investigation. It can pick up pyelonephritis up to 40 to 50%. In the rest of the cases, it may not be able to pick up. What is found in these cases? The features may be enlargement of the kidney, thickening of the surrounding fascia, impairment of corticular medullary differentiation, any calculi in the kidney or ureter can be picked up, and decreased mobility of the kidney. Whenever there is a surrounding inflammation, the fascia holds it. So this kind of investigation can be a primary investigation, but it is not the radiological investigation of choice. The radiological investigation of choice is a CT scan. Now, this is the investigation of choice in both for the adults and the children. It is more sensitive than the ultrasound and the IVP. Ultrasound has a sensitivity to pick up is only around 25 to 40%. What extra advantages CT gives? We can see the other intra-abdominal organs also. We can see the spread of the disease also. It can give us a clue about renal chimeral perfusion also. Now, this particular is a contrast enhanced, that is, contrast has been given. Here, the entire kidney is opacified with the contrast. Here, the kidney is opacified, and perhaps this is the area where infection or abscess has developed, so there is no excretion. Areas of abscess, liquefaction, all can be picked up. The relationship of kidney along with the surrounding structures can be picked up. So this is a very good investigation of choice, and in case there is a stone, it can be picked up with a 97% accuracy. MRI, yes, MRI also can be done. It has more sensitivity than CT for the differentiation between nephritis and renal abscess. If these are the hypodense areas picked up in MRI, then MRI, because of its relative diffusion imaging, it can give us a clue and whether this is nephritis or a form of abscess. Though it can be picked up in CT also, but MRI may give you better sensitivity. In patients, like I said, 20 to 40% it can happen in pregnancy. And CT, any kind of radiation is contraindicated. So MRI, there is no radiation exposure, can be used up in pregnant females. The usual course of the disease is, and if you have detected early and initiated treatment, it can pass off as an uncomplicated pyelonephritis. Otherwise, there can be, patient can go into sepsis. Kidney function can be compromised because of the kidney involvement, that is API, acute kidney injury can happen. And if not controlled, it can develop into renal abscess, peri-nephric abscess, and in case it heals by renal scarring. So wherever there is an area of abscess, ultimately it heals by fibrosis, and that will be a scar on the kidney. What is the management? The mainstay of the management is antibiotic therapy. And in the supportive management, that can be painkillers, that can be antipyretics for the control of fever. When you may have the patient may not be eating well, you have to ensure that there is adequate hydration and nutrition. In case of vomiting, you will have to add antiemetics and so on, various supportive therapies. Patients who are at extreme of age and those who have comorbid conditions or those who are at toxic appearing, they should be preferably admitted in the hospital. In case antibiotics and all this treatment is not responding for 72 hours and the patient appears to be deteriorating, that there is element of sepsis, his general condition is getting poorer day by day. There is a formation of abscess. There are lymphocytic changes. These become the indication that surgical intervention has to be done. The surgical intervention can be in form of drainage, which can be done by aspiration, ultrasound guided, or a pigtail catheter drainage, or it can be the nephrectomy in the last resort. So various antibiotics which are listed for pyelonephritis, it could be first line or second line therapies. First line therapy usually work only in cases of sorry, in cases of uncomplicated pyelonephritis. Now they can be nicely treated with ciprofloxacin and levofloxacin. Then second line therapy are usually reserved for the complicated infection. This could be extended spectrum cephalosporins or penicillins like piperacillin tazobactam. You can have ceftriaxone, ceftazidime, or carbapenem in the second line like meropenem, atapenem, and dolipenem. Usually this side of the drugs are reserved for a more toxic or patient with comorbidities or patient who is not responding within 48 to 72 hours. Usually, it is always a combination of antibiotics for a synergistic effect. You can add aminoglycosides. Aminoglycosides is mostly added, but beware of the nephrotoxicity of aminoglycosides. So they have to be monitored on day-to-day basis. If this pyelonephritis evolves into an abscess, then the only option is surgical drainage if the antibiotics have failed. And in case there is an infection like an abscess, usually you have to give antibiotics for around 10 to 14 days. And thereafter, the patient is discharged, may continue for another 4 days. And if the infection, the cause of this pyelonephritis was a calculus, then do remember, if the patient is too sick, we need to remove the calculus in the same sitting. Or if the patient has responded to the antibiotics, then after the patient has recovered, we should take care of the stones. Usually what happens is whenever there is a stone disease, there is an element of infection is always there. The organisms can survive within the calculus and along the calculus. Various modalities for stone diseases are it can be you can do a ESWL, you can do a URS or endoscopic method, you can do a PCNL, or you can do a cystoscopic basis to remove this calculi. One of the complications or of this pyelonephritis, if not controlled, it can go into severe necrotizing infection. Emphysematous pyelonephritis is a severe necrotizing acute multifocal bacterial nephritis. And there can be extension of the infection. It is not limited to kidney, but involvement of the surrounding structures, but it will be renal parenchyma first, followed by renal fascia, and then the surrounding organs. The hallmark of this particular infection is it is mostly found in patients with diabetes or immunocompromised patients. For unknown reasons, it has been found as more in females. And again, for unknown reasons, 2/3 of the cases are present on the left side. The usual bacteria is E. coli, which is found in 60% of the cases, but it can be again a mixture of organisms. Now, if you are saying this is a plain X-ray KUB, and this black thing is not a bowel, but it has taken a shape of the kidney. That means it is the gas around the kidney or within the kidney. Now, this is the hallmark of emphysematous pyelonephritis. The patient who have emphysematous pyelonephritis are gravely ill or toxic most of the times. So the usual presentation will be they present with fever, chills, abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, flank pain. There can be a mass if there was a hydronephrotic kidney which was secondarily infected, or there can be crepitations. Now, crepitations is because of this gas forming, and if this gas is extending to the abdominal wall. If you see this particular image, they see this kidney appears normal, and this part appears normal, but these black dots are all gas. Here, the outline of the kidney is also irregular. That means there has been spread to the surroundings. The renal fascia has been involved. These multiple dots are indicative of gas. Now, this patient should be immediately admitted. Glycemic control should be achieved in diabetics, and usually most of the time you start with a higher antibiotics. In case the patient is not responding for 24 to 48 hours, and patient appears to be deteriorating, is going into toxemia, then urgent nephrectomy is the treatment which has to be done. The usual mortality rate is 20%. That is 1 out of every 5 is likely to die But in cases with comorbidities, uncontrolled diabetes, this mortality rate can go up to 40%. This particular disease can be unilateral or it can be bilateral also. Chronic pyelonephritis, as the name suggests, it is chronic. That means if this was acute, there was multiple small abscesses of the renal parenchyma. Chronic pyelonephritis is, and this happens as a one-time episode or maybe twice. Chronic pyelonephritis is characterized by renal inflammation and infection repeatedly. And this repeated infection results in scarring, which ultimately deforms the kidney like this. So one of the most common cause for chronic pyelonephritis is major anatomic anomaly, and the usual anatomic anomaly, which is found in 90% of the cases, is a vesico-ureteral reflex. What is VUR? That means urine which is in the bladder should ideally not go up because there is a sphincter mechanism here, is a physiological sphincter, oblique course of the ureter, which prevents the urine to go to the ureters from the bladder. But in VUR, this protective mechanism is lost. You can see this urine can go up to into the ureters, and subsequently there is a dilatation of the ureters, and then there is a hydronephrosis. Also, renal parenchyma is gradually taken off or eaten off. What will this lead to? This will lead to ultimately progressive loss of renal function, and it can eventually happen to a end-stage renal disease where renal transplant will be needed. So that is chronic pyelonephritis. In chronic pyelonephritis, there is a progressive kidney damage because of the repeated infection. What can happen? The loss of function can give rise to proteinuria. There can be glomerulosclerosis. End-stage renal disease, that is, a patient may require, kidney function is compromised, may require dialysis at early stage. Developmental of renal hypertension, it could be a xanthogranulomatosis pyelonephritis. And if there is a obstruction, concomitant obstruction with it, that is, repeated scarring has resulted in some kind of a stricture or stenosis at uretropelvic junction, or there is a coexisting stone, there can be pyelonephrosis. And progressive renal scarring, it happens because of the reflux nephropathy. What imaging studies are required for this? The blood investigation required will be the same as we discussed in acute pyelonephritis. In the imaging, like I said, 90% of the cases you find vesico-ureteral reflux. The treatment for the investigation of choice for that is the IV or the voiding cystourethrogram, where you can document when the patient is voiding, urine is coming out, but some amount of urine may be seen going into the ureters also. The reflux can be picked up on cystourethrogram. So this is how image or looks in VUR. You see the bladder which is full distended, the ureters which is dilated and tortuous, and this has subsequently resulted in hydronephrosis of the kidney. You see the typical calyceal blunting has gone, and calyces has started to become dilated over a period of time because of this repeated scarring. You see this outline of the kidney is lost. Perhaps this part of the kidney is now not functioning or is scarred. Another investigation will be gold standard to detect the renal scar for documentation will be the radioisotope scan, which is dimercaptosuccinic acid or DMSA. Now this is a morphological scan. You may have heard of another scan which is a DTP scan, which is a dynamic renal scan. So what you see in a DMSA, you see the outline of the kidney. It appears the outline of the kidney is perhaps preserved here. Some amount of outline is lost here, but if you see on the other side, only is visible, and it appears that this is the scarred part which has healed by fibrosis, and this is a non-functioning part. CT scan also can be done, ultrasound also can be done as an adjunct, but this is the primary or this is the standard investigation you need here for the cause. Because in patients of VUR, the management depends on preventing recurrent infections, prevent the renal damage, and minimize the morbidity because there is a disease process is already existed. Unless you take mechanisms or plan to control that disease, the repeated infections will continue to happen. So how do you prevent that? That means routine administration of prophylactic antibiotics based on whatever the culture is, and you give antibiotics in a prophylactic dose, not a therapeutic dose, for longer periods of time, maybe like 2 months in children, maybe up to continuous up to 6 months, or till the time you are going to do a definitive intervention or management of the pathology responsible for chronic pyelonephritis. One of the thing is endoscopic injection of dextranom or hyaluronic acid. Now this is injected along the ureters. It induces inflammation, and it is said that it leads to myofibrous proliferation, which ultimately leads to fibrosis. The whatever the tortuous cause of ureter is there, it controls that. It makes the ureter diameter less and straightens the ureter. In case this is an endoscopic, minimal invasive, that is not possible, then you have to do some kind of a anti-reflux surgery. Moving into pyonephrosis, now as we discussed two infection, one of the commonest or your present commonest feature which is common to all of this is the presence of a obstruction. So pyonephrosis is essentially pus in the renal pelvis, and which happens in the presence of a stone. So this was the kidney. Here is the ureter. Ureter will be found on this medial side. So if there is a large stone here, so there was perhaps hydronephrosis, there was pyelonephritis, and over a period of time, pyonephrosis happened. And what pyonephrosis has done, that there has been necrosed or sloughed urothelium of the renal tissue, and it has eaten up the kidney. So see, the renal parenchyma has gone here. So there is always a pus under pressure, or it is an abscess of the kidney. There is an abscess of the collecting system. Okay. So this walled off. This is already a walled off because stone is here, and this is all walled off because of the kidney capsule and the surrounding renal fascia. It requires urgent treatment because if it progresses, it will lead up to urosepsis or may add to the mortality of the patient. What are the risk factors? The risk factors are anatomic urinary tract obstruction, that is a stone, or any other thing, a tumor which may be compressing the ureter, retroperitoneal fibrosis, horseshoe-shaped kidney, etc. And contributing to it is immunosuppression, maybe with the use of steroids, or diseases like diabetes or acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Now this simply explains, this funnel diagram explains what are the reasons which are required for, what are the causative factors which are needed for pyonephrosis. That is a existing obstruction which has led to hydronephrosis, and then the infection of the system, it turns the hydronephrosis into pyonephrosis. For the infection, multiple agents are there, causative agents, but predominant one is E. coli. There can be, depending on the immune competence of the patient, it can be Enterococcus, Klebsiella, Proteus, etc. It can be mixture of these organisms. In uncommon cases, you may find fungal infections also or salmonella infections. Obstruction can be caused by, usually 75% of cases, they are stones, or it could be a stagnant calculi. Then I already listed retroperitoneal fibrosis, renal tumors or the ureter tumors. Pregnancy is also causing in the second or third trimester some kind of a pressure effect on the ureter. Uretropelvic junction obstruction, this can be because of the stricture. Uretrovesical junction obstruction, again by the stricture or stone, or it could be a neurogenic bladder, and which is giving rise to reflux. And tuberculosis is one of the cause. Tuberculosis comes here in infection also, and it sequelae of tuberculosis leads to obstruction also. The presentation can be asymptomatic bacteria in few cases, because you have to keep a high index of suspicion or patient can present in frank sepsis. Rest of the presenting feature will be the same which I have discussed in acute and chronic pyelonephritis. So always keep a high index of suspicion in a patient who is having fever, flank pain, recent UTI or a ongoing UTI, who have started complaining of a flank pain. Since it is a pyonephrosis, Then the palpable mass may be palpable, which may be tender. Investigations, you will need again blood investigations which may show you increased THC and neutropenia. You will need serum chemistry, KFTs, urine analysis, microscopic routine examination along with the culture, because again the antibiotic treatment will depend on the culture. Blood culture in few cases, and in case there is some kind of a diagnostic dilemma or there is a contamination of repeated samples or there is a stone and urine or the urine coming is showing no growth, then we can attempt the ultrasound aspiration or collective system to obtain that person and uh, send it for culture and investigations. So the imaging study which will be required, you can do an ultrasound. Ultrasound will show you some hydronephrosis, and the hallmark is hyperechoic debris in the collecting system, which can be picked up even with the ultrasound. But again, the treatment investigation will be a computed tomography. Advantage will be it can always give you the function of the kidney. Like here again, this is function, and this white thing is which is opacified by the contrast. What are the reasons for obstruction? That it can pick up a stone more nicely. It can measure an area of stricture. It can also tell you the spread of the infection, whether it is localized to the kidney or it has moved beyond the kidney. The features which may found on CT scan may be the thickening of the renal capsule. You may find some kind of a debris or the stone within the system, or extension of the infection. Now here this is a normal kidney. This particular kidney has been turned into a bag of pus. And here if you see, there is a hydronephrosis, and perhaps there is a loss of demarcation of the kidney in this particular region. That is, perineal fat stranding has happened. Management of this particular pyelonephrosis is what we have discussed. It is pus, is a bag of pus, and antibiotic penetration is very less. So what we need to do is decompression, drainage, or removal of the obstruction or the block. Before the 1980s, when we didn't have so many of this physiological interventions, then emergency nephrectomy used to be done. But nowadays, in whatever modalities, whether it is infection or whether it is malignancy, the standard of care is to preserve as much as renal function which we can. So how it can be accomplished? It can be accomplished, this drainage can be accomplished. It can be done retrograde or antegrade. What is meant by retrograde? Retrograde means you can put up a ureteral stent. Now this is a double J stent or a pigtail stent. You can see a pigtail at both ends, or this can be a J. So what we do is in retrograde that we put a cystoscope, go into the bladder, identify the ureteric opening, and pass a stent which goes to the kidney. What is the purpose? Purpose is bypass the obstruction and ensure whatever the system is infected, the system gets drained. But this has to be done in presence of antibiotics. You have to start antibiotics first, because any intervention can give rise to a flare-up. And in antegrade decompression is you put a PCN. It is known as a PCN, percutaneous nephrostomy, through the kidney. So this can be done ultrasound guided or CT guided. You identify the system or the dilated calyces system, and through the skin you pass a toca and dilate that tract, and then you put this pigtail catheter or PCN catheter inside like this. The catheter remains there, and this will ensure the drainage outside in a bag. Advantage of PCN, it is definitely more invasive, but there can be advantages. You can give some medications directly through this tubing, and once you have controlled the infection, then it can be used. You can put up a dye, you can delinate and activate the kidney, and then you can plan to do the final treatment, that is a corrective treatment to remove that obstruction, remove the cause of obstruction. And this is a minimally invasive. This is absolutely minimally invasive, and you have put this tube through the skin into the kidney. Otherwise, you may have to do nephrectomy. Nephrectomy will require, general anesthesia, a formal surgery, and it can be moribund for many patients. So this is the standard of care in pyelonephrosis that you have to drain. Peri-nephric abscess. Now, peri-nephric abscess is a collection of suppurative material in the renal parenchyma or in the peri-nephric space. Now, there is a catch. Like acute pyelonephritis, which can present within 3 days or 5 days. Peri-nephric abscess, the presentation can be delayed or insidious. Now, this delay is directly increasing the risk of morbidity and mortality. What is a peri-nephric abscess? So this is the kidney, and this is the Gerota's fascia. This is the Gerota's fascia. So any collection in this region will be a peri-nephric abscess that is surrounding the kidney. Most of the time, these abscesses can be by the rupture. If you find a corticomedullary or some, you find an abscess here, which can be a complication of pyelonephritis. If it is ruptures outside the capsule, it becomes a peri-nephric abscess. If it is a corticomedullary abscess, then usually you find gram-negative. But if it is the only cortical abscess, the cortical abscess usually happens by bloodstream infection. The causative agent can be a gram-positive bacteria. So peri-nephric abscess happens because of the renal abscess which has ruptured. This abscess can be because of the secondary to urinary tract obstruction, because it is inadequately drained, or it can be a hematogenesis effect also. So there is a delay, 14 days I said, insidious onset. So it is a diagnostic challenge even for a astute clinician. So it ideally should be picked up early. So early treatment has always a better results. How it will present? Again, it is a life-threatening or an organ-threatening infection. Mortality is up to 56%. If you see, I have listed that even with modern surgical therapy, the mortality rate is 8 to 20%. And 1/3 of the patients do have a significant morbidity. It can be because of the disease or because of the intervention done for the disease. See, more than 50% have symptoms more than 14 days. These symptoms can include fever, unexplained fever where you don't find a cause. Patient comes, you get a chest X-ray done, you have done other blood investigation, you find you raised TLC, but you're not exactly getting the cause of the fever. Flank pain, chills, dysuria, weight loss, and gastrointestinal symptoms like nausea or vomiting. In case this peri-nephric abscess has moved in the upward spread to the diaphragm, towards the diaphragm, it can lead to pleuritic pain also. One catch in peri-nephric abscess is, yes, in most of the cases, the source is kidney, but any abscess in the vicinity of kidney may not be exactly because of the kidney. So it can be, sequelae of pancreatitis. It can be on the left side, it could be diverticulitis. There can be small perforation in the colon. There can be infected fecal matter which goes outside, and there can be a collection or abscess formation. But kidney or colon are related, it may be difficult to differentiate whether it is peri-nephric because of kidney or diverticulitis. Retroperitoneal appendicitis, if it complicates and forms into an abscess, it will be difficult. Infective perirenal hematoma, xanthogranulomatous pyelonephritis, so on. So there can be multiple cause for a collection in peri-nephric region. So again, ultrasound can give you clue. You can do it bedside, but the best investigation will be a CT scan. What will give CT scan? It can again give you function, delineate the anatomy, and it can show you the various plane where this collection is, peri-nephric abscess is taking. If you see this kidney perhaps is normal, and this kidney, okay, a white part is that is the contrast has been taken up, and this is the collecting system, and you see everything in the vicinity. This is perhaps the peri-nephric collection which is along this, and this is the thickening of the fascia because of this collection. This is all is peri-nephric abscess or a peri-nephric collection. How to treat it? The treatment is drainage. So pyelonephrosis and peri-nephric abscess, the treatment is drainage, which can be done with the help of ultrasound or CT guidance. And antibiotics are always as adjunct. In acute and chronic, antibiotics were the first ones, and here you have to ultimately do a drainage. In severe cases, you may even need nephrectomy. Those cases are if the patient who are old or extremes of age who have multiple comorbidities, they are in sepsis and not responded to antibiotics. Kidney has been damaged that you cannot salvage the kidney. Abscess, there is a huge abscess which has already eaten up the kidney, or it was a case of emphysematous pyelonephritis. Genitourinary tuberculosis, of course, it falls in the gamut of chronic disease, but it is a totally separate topic, and I will say it is a big topic. I will just try to give you a brief overview. The word is not renal tuberculosis, the word is GUTB, that means genitourinary tuberculosis. It can affect any organ in the urinary system from kidney till the prostate or urethra, and also male genitalia and female genitalia are involved. That is uterus in female, and in the males it can be infection of the vas or epididymis. So how does TB reaches kidney? Usually it is a hematogenic spread from the latent infection of lungs. Kidney renal tuberculosis, it is not rare. Yes, it has been found, but it is 20 to 40% of all extrapulmonary tuberculosis cases. Kidneys involved majority, that is 75% of the cases. Then the second commonest organ for the males is epididymis, followed by testis, bladder, and the females, apart from the kidney, it is genital organ, which is ureter. Isolated involvement of genital organs can also happen, but it happens in cases of 50 to 30%, and it happens in cases of women. I will just give you a brief glimpse that what happens in kidney, what happens in lung is exactly happening in the kidney. That is a granulomatous infection is happening. Multiple granulomas form in the kidney. They form in the cortex. Since it is a bloodstream infection, the typical presentation may be bilateral, but we see unilateral presentation most of the time. That is a more effective kidney. They present more early. And whereas the other infection in other kidney is going on, they may present late. So the cortex is involved first. So when these multiple granuloma coalesce, they form a kind of a abscess. This particular abscess or coalescent granulomas, now they can go into the calyceal system. So they now go into the calyceal system. Then from that system, it's the bacilli which are there, or the infection which are there, it goes to the renal pelvis. That is the collective system, ureters, bladder, and other genital organs. In 5 to 10%, there can be direct involvement of genital organs by bloodstream infections. Now, TB, as you know, it is a fight between the body's defense mechanism and versus the immune responses of the TB. So depending on the patient defense mechanism, what will happen? Either the body will control it, these lesions, granulomas will heal by fibrosis and they will scar the kidney. Or whenever there is a tubular structure, there can be stricture formation. Now stricture formation, they will happen in cases of ureter. The ureteral disease is coming from the kidneys only once the collective system has been involved. That is, the abscess has ruptured into the collecting system. Since ureter, if there is no obstruction, proximal and middle part of the ureter are rarely involved, and there is some kind of a physiological sphincter mechanism at the lower end of the ureter at uretrovesical junction. There is a small stasis of the urine. Now that is responsible for the sphincter mechanism responsible that the tubercular bacilli will have a maximum effect in that region. What will happen? Since it is a tubular structure, it will heal. So it will heal by fibrosis and give rise to a stricture. And this stricture will give rise to hydroureteral nephrosis. Bladder TB. Now, bladder TB again starts around the ureteral orifice. When we do a cystoscopy, usually it is superficial reddish kind of inflammation. But as more layers of the bladder are involved, and ultimately they heal by fibrosis or by scarring, what will happen? The bladder will contract. The usual expanding capacity of the bladder is lost by fibrosis, and the bladder becomes something which is known as a thimble bladder. Thimble means small, non-expanding bladder. If the bladder is small, non-expanding, imagine what can happen. patient will have increased frequency of micturition. There's a classical presentation that patient presents with increased frequency in case of urinary bladder tuberculosis. So, what is the presentation? It will depend on the organ involved. If the kidney is involved and it's a infection in early phase, you may find fever, you may find evening rise of the temperature, you will find all stigmata of tuberculosis. As the infection presents are progressive, it is usually the sequelae of tuberculosis which has led to complication. The patient mostly present with those. So what happens is patient will complain of increased frequency, patient will complain of dysuria. But when you get a urine culture done, culture is usually sterile. This is classically known as sterile pyuria. Why? Because it is AFB, it is tubercular bacilli, which will not grow on the standard cultures. You will have to get a specific culture for that. For that, high index of suspicion is absolutely must. Most common symptoms will be increased frequency of micturition, dysuria, flank pain if the kidney is involved, suprapubic pain, and if the urothelium is involved, there can be blood. If genital system is involved, infertility can happen. If epididymis is involved, then it is a unilateral painful enlargement of the scrotum. Patients who have a prostatic TB, they will have dysuria or a perineal pain. And renal TB, if it is in the starting phase, may present as flank pain or superimposed infections. I don't have got a good picture, but you see the stigmata or the various sequelae. There can be an abscess. There can be, this is infundibular stenosis, that a calyceal stenosis has happened. Ultimately, it will go into pyelonephrosis. And when this system, this abscess or erodes into the collective system, the bacilli will travel here, and usually there is some kind of a stasis at lower end. So what will happen? Stricture will happen, and there can be hydronephrosis like that. If it goes into the bladder, see the bladder wall is inflamed and thickened, and it can give rise to granulomatous inflammation also, and it will ultimately lead to a fibrosed thimble bladder. Investigation, I believe for the TB, you might be aware of the various investigations. You will get a complete blood picture. TB patients are nutritionally low, they may be anemic. That are ESR, C-reactive protein, and ESR. ESR is also indicator of whenever to titrate the response to the disease. Then you can get, since renal infection is not, renal tuberculosis is not common, immunodeficiency stage should be always checked up. Montu test can be done. Urine studies, like I've already told you, the hallmark is a sterile pyuria. And then how to pick up this bacilli? This bacilli can be picked up on typically the classical samples which we send is early morning urine sample. We send the entire urine sample to the lab, and they centrifuge the urine sample and they look for acid-fast bacilli. But the yield is very low. It has a sensitivity of 65%. Though it is 100% specific, whenever you document acid-fast bacilli, it is always specific, but the yield of this testing is very low. Other tests, apart from direct microscopy, you can do is a culture, whatever the early morning urine samples you record, put it on the LG medium, or you can do a backtech, which gives you results within 3 to 5 days or maximum 5 days. On this urine sample, you can also do nucleic acid amplification test. You must be aware of Gene Expert, that it picks up the tubercular proteins, and it can also give you a clue about sensitivity to the rifampicin, to the treatment. PCR is another one which has been extensively studied, especially in case of renal tuberculosis. So there are many PCR tests available which can be done to pick up the disease. Imaging study, you will get a chest X-ray, you may see the sequelae of the disease like fibrotic changes, or it may be active disease like miliary tuberculosis here. And whatever the lesions which we have healed in the kidney, the calcifications may be present. Ultrasonography, you may find cavitated lesions in the kidney. You may find a deformed kidney. You may find hydronephrosis, scarring. IVP used to be the standard imaging modality, which has now replaced by CT scan. So what will you pick in IVP? You can pick up lesions like this. This is the normal kidney. Here, this is the calcium dilatations. Then you have calcium disruption. CT can give you a picture that abscess was there, which are now communicating with the collecting system. You may find ureteral stricture. What will a ureteral stricture? If there is a stricture here, it will give rise to ureteral nephrosis and subsequently hydroureteronephrosis. So, and the bladder, you may find a small bladder. I don't have a photo image of the bladder here. Okay. So that is a thimble bladder. In the last stage, there is a term known as putty kidney. That is a kidney which is scarred, multiple calcification has been happened. This is a non-functioning, contracted, deformed kidney. It has to be removed. If the patient is symptomatic, that is getting superose infection under, has to be removed. This is how a renal tuberculosis may look like. You see, this is the cortex. Okay, collecting system is usually here. You see the multiple, collecting. These were the collections of the renal abscesses, which might have ruptured into the collecting system. This is deformation. This is the proper outline of the kidney is not. There's some kind of scarring has also happened here. This has led to renal scarring or deformation of the kidney. How will you manage this? Standard of treatment is once you confirm the diagnosis of TB, that is anti-tubercular drugs. Surgery may be required in 50% of the cases, but surgical intervention will always be needed when there is a hydronephrosis, then there is a renal insufficiency, that there was a stricture and kidney function is being compromised. You will have to treat the stricture so the urine flow is maintained. Further damage to the kidney is avoided. If the kidney has become poorly functioning, non-functioning, you may have to do a mastectomy. If genital organs are involved, then they cause infertility and they will have to do treatment accordingly. It may be a cause of persistent pain. Only then you remove that particular organ. Else it may not be. Only ATT may be sufficient. ATT, 4 drugs and 2 drugs, and 4 drugs in the continuation phase and 4 drugs in the starting intensive phase and 2 or 3 drugs in the continuation phase. What kind of surgery is done in renal tuberculosis? There are 2 kinds of surgeries. One is ablative. That is, organ has been damaged. It has to be removed. Like the image which I have shown you. Like this. Perhaps this, or if the kidney was like this, if it was a putty kidney, then it will have to remove it. So depending on the involvement, it could be partial or total nephrectomy. If the epididymis has been